Iran's formal rejection of the nuclear deal proposed by the United States has triggered an immediate response that is already manifesting across the skies and seas. Over the last 12 hours, a vast concentration of American military power has begun to saturate the Middle East. We are referring to specialized electronic warfare jets, aircraft equipped for radiation detection, and a carrier strike group moving under total radio silence. Washington has issued a definitive ultimatum guaranteeing rapid and violent action if a consensus is not reached. But Tehran is digging in. They are literally transforming subway stations into air raid shelters. The end of the Islamic regime seems to be near, and this is not an assessment exclusive to Americans. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated this openly: "My conviction remains unchanged. A government that can only sustain its authority through brutality and terror against its own citizens has its days numbered. It may be a matter of weeks, but this regime has lost any legitimacy to lead the nation. And if tens of thousands have died in recent protests, this only proves that the mullah's government can only hold the reins of power through pure terror." Analyzing the most critical reports, in just the last 18 hours, 6 EA-18G Growler aircraft were deployed to a base in Spain, supported by 4 refueling tankers. These are electronic warfare machines specifically created to blind hostile radars and dismantle air defenses. Furthermore, we have radiation detection equipment en route to Europe. The name of the equipment itself indicates the gravity of the situation. Added to this, C-17 cargo planes are transporting military hardware, possibly including F-35 fighters, to strategic positions. All of this adds to the contingent already positioned in the Middle East. President Trump referred to this as the Armada. Here's the inventory: the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group, accompanied by all its destroyers and fighter jets, dozens of additional fighters at bases in the region, Navy vessels, military airlift command, Coast Guard cutters, and almost certainly undetectable submarines, as they are not transmitting their signals. In fact, the carrier group has turned off its transponders. Its location is no longer being broadcast publicly. Logically, this does not prevent Iran from trying to locate it. They even released footage from a drone filming the carrier recently. It is a colossal vessel, and governments have means to track it. But the fact that it is operating in electronic silence sends a clear message. This is not a routine drill. Aircraft carriers only adopt this level of secrecy when entering high-risk zones, and it is likely that this is the current scenario. But why all this movement of military hardware? The answer is simple: negotiations have completely failed. Secretary of State Marco Rubio detailed the situation regarding our presence in the region, establishing a clear baseline for everyone. The base scenario is this: we maintain between 30 to 40,000 American troops distributed across 8 or 9 bases in that area. All of them are within range, not in theory but in practice, of thousands of Iranian suicide drones and short-range ballistic missiles that represent a direct threat to our troops. We need to maintain sufficient force and firepower in the region just as a basic defensive measure against the possibility that at some point the Iranian regime decides to attack our positions. The president always retains the prerogative of preemptive defense. Essentially, if there are indications that an attack on our troops is imminent, we will act to defend our personnel. We also hold security agreements, such as the Defense Plan for Israel and other pacts, which require a robust posture in the region to neutralize such threats. Therefore, I consider it wise and prudent to maintain a military presence capable of responding and, if necessary, proactively preventing an attack against thousands of American service members and allies. I hope it doesn't come to that point, But what you are observing now is the positioning of assets to defend against what could be an Iranian aggression. They certainly have the capacity for such, as they have amassed a vast arsenal of ballistic missiles, continuing to spend money on this even with their economy in tatters. The United States presented three central demands: the permanent end of all uranium enrichment, restrictions on the range and quantity of Iran's ballistic missiles, and the total cessation of Iranian support for proxy groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Iran rejected all conditions. A high-ranking Iranian official stated that the country will not compromise its enrichment for civilian purposes nor give up its missile arsenal, considered vital for its defense. Subsequently, Iran's foreign minister publicly declared that they will not negotiate under military threat, stating that no formal request for negotiation was made by the American side, although mediators are in contact. However, President Trump's response was direct. A massive armada is on its way to Iran, moving with speed, power, and determination. It is a larger fleet, led by the formidable aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, than the one sent to Venezuela. Just as in that case, it is ready and able to fulfill its mission quickly, with overwhelming force if necessary. The hope is that Iran comes to the table quickly to negotiate a fair deal. No nuclear weapons, something beneficial for everyone. Time is of the essence and is running out. As I said before, make a deal. They didn't, and the result was Operation Midnight Hammer, causing major destruction in Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Do not let that happen again. But the real question, which many ignore, is not whether the U.S. can attack Iran. We know they can. The question is, what will be the nature of this attack? The American armed forces have three main options. First, strike nuclear facilities. But this might not topple the regime. You destroy the infrastructure, but the government doesn't care as much about that. Second, strike the leadership. The problem is that the Iranian regime is vast and decentralized. It is not just Ayatollah Khamenei. Eliminating a leader will not bring instant democracy. The Revolutionary Guard alone has 200,000 members. The Basij paramilitary group counts another 400 to 500,000 members. It is impossible to decapitate a system of this magnitude by eliminating just a few leaders. This brings us to the third option: attacking Revolutionary Guard facilities and weapons depots. However, all these options carry immense risks and the certainty of massive Iranian retaliation. Iran has already made clear what this response will look like. Ali Shamkhani, a senior advisor to Khamenei, warned, "The idea of a limited strike is an illusion. Any military action by the U.S. will be seen as a declaration of war, and the response will be immediate, comprehensive, and unprecedented, targeting the heart of Tel Aviv and all supporters of the aggressor." This might just be rhetoric to instill fear, but there is a new complication the U.S. did not face during Operation Midnight Hammer. Gulf allies are imposing restrictions. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have stated they will not allow the use of their airspace for attacks against Iran. This is a significant shift, as there were no public refusals of cooperation before. If the U.S. respects these restrictions, any strike becomes logistically harder, requiring longer routes and greater exposure. Of course, the U.S. can operate without this access. B-2 bombers have flown from Missouri to Tehran in the past, but the operation becomes more complex and regional politics more tense. To make matters worse, Turkey's foreign minister publicly stated that the U.S. should not attack Iran at all. Remembering that Turkey is a NATO member, this statement was shocking. He said, "It is wrong to attack Iran and start another war." Iran would be ready to negotiate the nuclear issue again. The Turkish advice is to close the files one by one, starting with nuclear, and not treat everything as a single package. which would be humiliating and difficult for the Iranian leadership to accept. Furthermore, Iran is signaling its intentions. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson posted an old photo of the Strait of Hormuz with a clear message: if there is war, they will try to close the strait. This would have devastating global consequences as 20% of the world's oil passes through there daily. A closure, even temporary, would cause oil prices to skyrocket, creating economic chaos in Western democracies. This is Iran's ace in the hole. They cannot militarily beat the U.S., but they can hurt the world economy. Internally, something unusual is occurring. The regime is preparing the population for war in an unprecedented way. Reports indicate that Khamenei traveled to Qom, a holy city, on a pilgrimage typical before major decisions. When the supreme leader does this before a potential conflict, it is a warning sign. Additionally, the mayor of Tehran announced the conversion of subway stations and underground garages into bunkers, instructing the population to prepare escape routes. It is crucial to note that this did not happen before the 12-day tension with Israel. On that occasion, the regime did not publicly prepare civilians, perhaps because they did not expect war. This time, it is possible they genuinely expect a massive attack, or they are trying to amplify an external threat to unify domestic support following the massacre of thousands of their own citizens. Perhaps it is a combination of both. The crackdown was brutal, but that does not rule out real war preparations. Speaking of crackdown, after 20 days of total blackout, the internet in Iran is slowly returning, albeit with heavy filtering. Only approved sites are accessible to most. But for those who know how to bypass the barriers, new videos are emerging. Footage recorded during the massacre that can only now be shared. One of these videos is from Majid Farnia, a 46-year-old Iranian. On January 8th, before going out to protest, he recorded a final message. "I am recording this video. I am going to the demonstrations, not for me, but for our children, for the future generation, so they know. Maybe we didn't do enough. Maybe we should have acted sooner. But for freedom, sacrifices are necessary. Better late than never. Mom, Dad, I love you so much. I don't know what's going to happen. My brother, my sister, I love you. Long live the Shah." He was murdered by the Islamic Republic that same day. We also received a report from a doctor who was still in Tehran and risked his life to expose what happened in hospitals on January 8th and 9th. He reports that doctors and nurses were pressured to empty emergency rooms, discharging any patient regardless of medical condition, to free up space for injured security forces. We know security forces raided hospitals. In western Iran, medical staff tried to prevent their entry. Patients hid while authorities searched the wards looking for injured protesters. Dr. Ramanirad shared horrifying details passed on by colleagues. In some cases, patients were removed from ventilators. The order was to let them die, as they had no rights for being against the Islamic system. Ramanirad, who is also a dissident activist, says he feels compelled to speak out. He states that security forces are effectively controlling the hospitals. If they discover that someone injured in the protests sought help, or even if they have already left, they use security cameras to track, raid their homes, and arrest these people. But authorities are not just pursuing protesters. Dr. Ramanirad reports that 3 doctors from his team of 50 were arrested. Dermatologist Amene Soleimani, emergency physician Babak Puramin, and surgeon Farhad Nadali. It is believed they were detained for treating injured protesters. Another doctor, Alireza Golchini, was beaten and arrested. Human rights groups say he faces the death penalty for offering treatment to protesters via Instagram. This is the complex strategic reality in which we find ourselves. Regardless of how this scenario evolves, military briefing will continue on the front line of information, ensuring you receive the most accurate and unfiltered tactical updates on the geopolitical chessboard movement. The situation is volatile, and information is your best weapon. Therefore, it is vital that you verify your subscription and activate notifications right now, so you don't miss the next intelligence report. I am the host of Military Briefing, over and out.